President Trump will head to Capitol Hill today to make his case for a border wall to Congress. The visit, of course, follows the president's first primetime address from the Oval Office last night.
He explained why he believes the U.S. needs a wall to combat a crisis at the southern border. However, he stopped short of declaring a national emergency. Funding for a wall is at the center of the ongoing government shutdown, of course, now nearing the end of its third week, if you can believe it. So CBS News political correspondent OKeefe is joining us now to break down the president's speech and things that have come afterwards. So first off, just your general take on the president's speech. I know a lot of people were thinking that something newsworthy was going to come out of it. Seems like we heard a lot of what we've been hearing over the past few days.
Look, anytime the president speaks, it's news.
Right, true.
It may not have been new. And I think that's a part of the frustration for a lot of people, is that he was essentially reiterating a lot of the things he said via Twitter, in meetings that have been televised out of the White House, in confrontations with lawmakers, his surrogates. The difference was the format and the audience he was reaching by requesting the Oval Office primetime address format, one that is, reserved pretty much only for a president, and they have the right to ask for it. The fact, though, that he was also rebutted by Democrats who also didn't say anything new and provided their reiteration of their positions, suggests that we're still at the same spot we've been for almost 3 weeks, which is Republicans and Democrats disagree and can't seem to find any way to reach a new negotiation that would reopen the rest of the government.
Let me ask you, do you think that both sides sort of squandered this moment? I mean, everyone pretty much stopped to watch this, with the exception of other people who are watching.
You and I, and you and I have been living this for 3 weeks. Anyone who's been furloughed has been living this for 3 weeks. But there's 30+ million Americans, or 300+ million Americans in this country, and most of them just got back to school this week, got back to work, they're done with the holidays. This is the week that they finally, probably in some way, are going to be confronted with the realities of this. Maybe their neighbor's furloughed, or their brother, or they themselves are realizing that they're not getting their paycheck on Friday, or they made a call to the State Department to renew their passport and realized that they can't, or they thought that the refund was coming from the IRS and it isn't. This was the chance of these top leaders to sort of explain it all again to the nation, now that everyone is probably paying full attention.
And I want to focus on something you just said, because it's something clearly that the president did not say. Yes, there was no new news, but I was expecting at the very least that he would acknowledge those 800,000 workers that are furloughed, that are not going to receive a paycheck. I was hoping that he would at least display some level of empathy for what they are going through. Instead, what I heard is some of the typical things that I've heard from President Trump in the past, including trying to pit one group against another. African Americans are in danger because of what's happening at the border wall. I didn't hear anything about those folks who are not going to get paid this week.
It was probably a missed opportunity, and one that certainly Democrats are going to exploit today. We will see Democratic leaders in Congress stand with furloughed federal workers at the Capitol to talk about the fact that they're caught up in all this. Democrats keep talking about being taken hostage by the president and his decision to do this. I think you're going to see the workers do that.
Well, he thinks they're all Democrats, the people that are furloughed.
Well, I was going to make that point, which is a lot of them are members of labor unions that are far more supportive of Democratic lawmakers than Republican lawmakers. What a lot of Republican lawmakers are going to be reminded of this week, however, is that 85% of the federal workforce works far outside Washington, D.C., in red districts, in blue districts.
Parks?
In parks, well, but not even parks. It's nuclear laboratories. It's processing centers and offices that help, frankly, build a lot of the nation's largest cities: Denver, Atlanta, Chicago, Miami, Seattle. All these places across the country have large federal infrastructure because they are the Western Regional Office or the Southern Regional Office of a lot of these large federal departments. So tens of thousands of people in those areas of the country are potentially affected by this, plus the guy that runs the convenience store down the street, plus the daycare center that probably now has to tell some of its clients, if you can't make the payment this week, we'll waive the late fee. There's going to be all sorts of examples of how this starts to affect people in the coming days.
Can we talk a little bit about, a bit of a debate that arose once the president announced that he was going to be doing this Oval Office speech. And, people started to question whether or not the network should air it, or whether they should air it on some sort of a delay, because, the president at times has used incorrect statements or misleading statements to bolster his argument. And basically, should we air it if the president is at risk of not telling us the truth?
Where's Z? We should ask her, okay?
Wait, but people might not understand it because just like you said at the beginning of this, if the president's speaking, it's news.
It's news.
So they might not understand what this debate is all about.
Right. Well, and look, he made a very specific request that his predecessors have made too, which is, want to address the nation in prime time from the Oval Office. There was no gimmicky backdrop. This was designed by the White House, at least, to be seen as a serious address. And look, again, 800,000 people aren't getting paid this week. That has a ripple effect across the economy. Part of the government isn't fully operating. I think our colleagues who make these decisions realize that this is a significant news event, even if neither side really presented a potential compromise or anything terribly new. They did take advantage of a format that's been afforded to presidents before. And I think what's notable is that the Democrats very quickly insisted on equal time, and they were given it. And then we spent some time afterward, if you were watching here last night or on the mothership, contextualizing and fact-checking what both sides said.
Yeah.
I don't know if you may have seen this, Ed, but I know you guys were up really late last night, I believe. The New York Times' Maggie Haberman tweeted and reported, and she's usually well-sourced within the Trump administration, as you know, the president is expected to go to the border, that he didn't really want to go, and that he didn't even think that these efforts that he was making were going to have any effect. He's expected to take a trip to Capitol Hill. Is it going to have any effect?
Well, the trip to the border?
The
both.
speech and the trip to the border, because the reporting was that he sort of blamed it on Sarah Sanders and some of his advisors, but he really didn't think it would make a difference.
We weren't at that lunch, but apparently reports are that
I thought my invite got lost.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see whether or not this has any effect. And again, a lot of this being done now because most of the country is finally paying attention. What's telling is that he has to go to lunch with his own fellow Republicans. He shouldn't have to do that. But if he's going today, it's designed to shore up support among about 4 or 5 quivering Republican senators. Lisa Murkowski last night said she's got concerns about this. Cory Gardner, Colorado, has said it. Susan Collins of Maine. Joni Ernst of Iowa. Tom Tillis of North Carolina. What do they all have in common? They're all running for re-election in the next 2 to 4 years.
I was also saying, are they along the border?
But what about Congressman Will Hurd? He represents...
He's along the border.
Yeah,
he represents the border, and he's not coming out full gangbusters on the president's walkway.
Because he understands the reality of the situation. He's the congressman with the longest stretch of U.S.-Mexico border, more than 800 miles. Also, he's now the most vulnerable House Republican politically, who Democrats have tried now to knock off in the last 4 years. And, if you were to look at lists of potential vulnerable House Republicans in 2020, he's at the top of that list now.
That's really
just given the makeup of his district and the fact that, I think he, as he tries to convey the reality that the president doesn't necessarily agree with.
Ed O'Keefe, I hope you get some rest on Saturday. Thanks, Ed.